But anyway, so there's a new stream that just pops up here. Let's see how this goes. From your page too, are you able to share a watch party?
I see you. Do I
Okay.
see you? No, I don't see you.
Let's see. And I'm just trying to do a gallery view here. So
Yep.
Got both of us?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Beautiful. All right. So I'm going to try to get to the Facebook side of things so that I can start answering some questions as people come in. But it looks like we're going. So this is good.
Sweet.
Fantastic. And I'm sharing a watch party as well. With friends.
Oh, yeah. There it is.
Great. Awesome. Well, this is step 2. But it looks like we're going. So this is step 2 of the kickoff of the All Access Live conversation. I want to make sure that I can hear you.
I think I'm still here. I can hear you.
Beautiful. Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my friend Jason FELLMAN.
What up?
Last week, Jason, you had a Q&A session on Facebook, and you were inviting people to ask questions about sort of the state of the music industry. And there's a lot of information that people could be gathering from you. So I was going to ask you to just introduce yourself a little bit to the people that don't know you. I got a wide network of people around the world that are involved in music, right? And so tell us a little bit about your journey, what brought you to the point that you're at right now from.
Yeah, I mean, I'll abridge this thing. But I have to go back to high school. So grew up, musician, drummer, guitar player. Right after high school, went to Musicians Institute, PIT. It was a 1-year program at the time, graduated that. Came back to Portland, Oregon, where I'm from, and I did the band thing for a couple years. I wasn't feeling it. Just I don't know. I wasn't wired for it. You know what I mean? Like I think it takes a certain type of temperament and personality to be able to slog it out to get there. Sometimes, especially back then, it was a different animal. And so, what's that?
When was this?
This would have been 19. Like graduated high school in '91.
Okay.
And so this would be early '90s. So after a couple years of living in the mom's basement kind of thing, and I was working at Burlington Coat Factory, and I ended up deciding to go to the University of Texas in Austin. So I moved down to Austin, and I was in the radio, television, film program. But during the first semester, I ended up dropping out and starting a business with a guy down there that I had met, and then we ended up, I ran that thing for 10 years, and then I moved back to Portland and did some consulting with the old company for a few years. And during that time, I kind of like got back to music. It was 10 years later, right? So I was in my early mid 30s, and so I started doing some songwriting and such. And one of my bucket list items was to have an album. So in the process of doing that album of my original music, I met Kevin Hahn, a local producer and musician here in Portland, who I'm also a bandmate with now. And I met Kevin, and in the process of doing my album, I got to know Kevin, and also I got to know other musicians through my original band. Through doing the original band, at the time, we were playing at clubs. I think a lot of musicians can relate to this. We were playing in a club where you're an original musician, but you want to make some money. So you have a choice. Like, well, how can I take 4 hours with my own music and hold an audience and the like? And so what we did was we wanted to be able to take the whole night. So what we did is we made the whole last third of the evening all 80s covers. And with the idea is you kind of come a little bit earlier, but then stick around because you'd be waiting for that. And it turns out that it totally worked. Like it was exactly what we would hoped it would be if people would hang out. So we were, and what I discovered in that process was a couple of things. One, having gone through the tedium of recording and everything, and Kevin, of course, is amazing to work with, but I just don't have the temperament for songwriting and studio recording. I'm just not wired that way. I'm a live guy. I like to play live.
Amen.
Right? And so I was really enjoying playing the 80s covers with the guys, and so we ended up spinning off an 80s cover band, which initially was called Breakfast Club, which I think is when you and I met.
That's right.
At this point was probably 2007-ish, probably, when you and I met.
Okay.
And so the Breakfast Club ultimately ended up becoming a successful 80s cover band, ended up changing the name to Radical Revolution. One thing led to another. We spun with our association with Kevin, we spun off Journey tribute band Stone in Love. That became popular, and from that sort of spawned the growth of it was one of the catalysts for a healthy tribute scene here in Oregon, and maybe in the Northwest a little bit. And that led to Hairfest, which got me into the festival business. Hairfest is we're going into our 10th year, one of the sort of top tribute festivals in the world, I believe.
Yeah.
Here, going into our 10th year, it's a overnight kind of event. So if you fast forward through, again, I'm kind of just trying to not go on forever about this. Basically, if you get to where we are now, all of that has gotten to me to became a musician, realized that musicians really had a really crappy situation. No one was really advocating. They were accepting shitty deals. Club compensation didn't make any sense. It was just a really weird thing. It didn't make any sense to me because of the value that live music brings to an establishment. You really see it now.
Right.
And so I think part of the process, it got me. It got the business person back, in me, and so I ended up launching a JFEL Presents, which is actually as a promoter, but I ended up to a place where I was actually doing more booking agency business under a promoter sort of business label, just like fixed pay bookings and such. And so I ended up with a few different things now. So one of them, as a musician, I still play. So I play guitar, and I'm one of the lead singers in Radical Revolution 80s tribute. And then I play drums in Stone in Love Journey tribute, and I actually have a third band now that was about to debut before we had to take this time off. But Red Light Romeos is a yacht rock tribute band that actually existed before. Went away for a while, is now back with some of the core guys plus some of us new members. So I'm going to play drums in that. So that's been super fun. So that's my music world. And then on the business side, Joan Monin, who owns the Wild Hair Saloons in Canby and Oregon City, of course, you know Joan very well.
Yep.
And so she and I are 50-50 partners in Hairfest LLC. So that we own two festivals. We have Hairfest, and then we also have Wild Hair Country Festival, which actually isn't a tribute festival. It's a country music festival. We use the term country very loosely nowadays, right? Because our headliners in our first 2 years have included bands like Whiskey Myers, Cody Johnson, who actually had the #1 album on the country charts last year.
Wow.
So it's all original bands. So that's a difference. So we have our festival business. And then I recently spun off, just actually at the beginning of this year, I took all of my booking business as a fixed pay booking agency, and I merged with Sterling Talent, which is a 30-plus-year-old booking agency with Becky Johnson, which, of course, if you're local here, everybody knows Becky. She's the queen of booking, and it's been so fun working together. And she and I, of course, had worked together so much anyway. So she and I are 50-50 partners in Sterling Talent, and then the last business I still have, JFEL Presents, which is now purely a concert promoter. Okay. So I do, somewhere between 300 or 400 shows a year, and most of them are tribute shows. So anyway, that's the context. I'm a music guy, sort of part entrepreneur, part musician, like a lot of people, like you, and Silver Lining Media.
It's tough to balance, right? because you're also a family guy, right? So you've got this identity of being,
exactly.
And I would say at this point in time, if you're like me, the attention gets shifted, right? So you can prioritize stuff with the family a little bit more.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like, first of all, just both personally and professionally, especially professionally. This is horrible. Like, literally, all three businesses are at zero. 100% revenue loss, right? And I'm like one of 100,000 people. So I'm not like I can't complain. I'm just one of many. But
that helps.
Who could have ever imagined a universe where you literally all your revenue's gone overnight, and in all three businesses? So,
right. Yeah. No.
Oh boy, here's the case for diversification, not only in the type of work you do, but for the industries you serve. I'm not diversified, but this is I know some people who are, and that's really paying off right now.
Yeah. No.
That's probably another thread.
You know what?
Yeah.
You don't have to stay on threads very much. One
Well,
thing
but I wanted to answer that half your question. So personally, right?
yeah,
If you take the money out of it,
yeah,
and you take the suffering for everybody else out of it,
right,
people
yeah,
losing gigs and all the actual death and all that and sickness. If you took that out of it, personally for me, this free time is a gift of unmentionable proportions. Like I almost feel guilty saying that, but the honest truth is that I needed the world to stop. I didn't want it to stop this way, but
yeah,
I was getting to the edge of I can't handle all this shit anymore, and I really needed a break. And I got to tell you, I enjoy getting up in the morning, and all the decisions are taken away. The only
right,
thing I'm doing is canceling gigs and rescheduling. That's it.
right,
What
yeah,
else is there to do? I could, jump in and work on the business and update this and that, but for me, that wasn't the problem before. Like I just need some sanity check, and then my
yeah,
family, both in terms of the kids' schooling and being a part of that, and obviously I do the cooking for my family. People know me; I'm always posting.
oh,
Right?
yeah,
But I didn't used to cook 3 meals a day. You
right,
know what I mean? It was like dinner. So so a lot more of that. And actually, I think the thing that everybody can relate to now is that like dishes. It's amazing. Like if you're home all the time, you are
yeah,
doing dishes. It's like someone who does laundry for a young child.
right.
Oh, it's the same
It's
thing because that's what they're
and
always doing. Well, the rest of us are
endless,
basically getting to find out what it's like to do laundry for little kids
right?
by
Yeah,
doing dishes.
I, I see that opportunity for my kids to see that. My God, Dad, where do these dishes come from? Like where, like they're always there. They always were there. I was just taking care of them for you, so I employ their help now. But uh, I'm getting a little bit of a delay. I lost you a little bit, I think.
I'm still here. I hear you.
Okay, good. Uh, you touched on a couple of things about this because you said you felt guilty about being able to take advantage of the positive attributes of this change, and I think I faced myself, faced those same things in myself that I needed to slow down. I had to. When you spread yourself out really thin, you can't put 100% into anything. Not
You
just
also have the added dynamic of you're on the road a lot as a musician, right? See, I
what,
don't go out on the road really, other than maybe a few dates here in the summer, so I can't even wrap my head around that.
but I think you can if you looked at how my business is structured, right? Because I'm on the road a lot. I can't be an attentive dad at home when I'm doing that. But
Right.
my other business, my web design business, is built that I can bring my laptop and work from wherever,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
I'm really fortunate with that. I was diversified enough to have some opportunities, but for me, being on the road and traveling and playing music actually was such a huge part of my identity. That's my struggle right now, is realizing that I yearn and I need this connection with people, and uh, I have all these friends that we've made around the world that we're expecting to come see these shows. And for me, I feel like I'm somehow letting them down. They understand, right? There's a pandemic. Nobody else can nobody else can do anything about it either. So it's cool to have,
I think it's safe to say you're an extrovert.
perhaps, yeah, a little
Which
bit.
I think most people would say that I'm an extrovert, but I'm actually, I think, what's called an ambivert, which probably a lot of people are. But basically, I kind of take it both ways. But I would probably identify more with being one of the fundamental differences is that extroverts recharge by being around people. That's how you
Sure.
replenish.
Yeah.
Introverts replenish by being alone. I'm definitely the alone guy. So I
Yeah.
mean, like, I don't feel stir crazy at all. I'm like, I could stay home for many months. I mean, again, all the other crappy stuff about this aside, I I'm just you know, just kind of shut it all out and
Yeah. So it's good that you can shut it out. I mean, we really can. You can look at this thing as something that you're so impacted by so many ways that you could feel like it's an imposition, and the rest of us, are also going through this phase of needing to just reevaluate. So
well, I think the fact, I mean, I think what you said was really important is that I think the part of the reason why I don't feel like it's such a gut punch to me is because it's happening to all of us. You
yeah,
know what I
right,
mean? So I can't, I'm like, I mean, yeah, it sucks. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. And, but at the same time, there is a ton of positive and I don't feel woe as me about it because, we're kind of all, and honestly, I mean, I got it better than some. I got some savings, and even though we're at zero revenue, I'm going to burn through that. And I got a little time at least to figure it out. Uh,
yeah,
and, again, really the bad part is that you just really, you know, watching people you care about struggle.
Absolutely.
or also just the political discourse, and we've talked about that. And it's a tough time to be a human right now, no matter what you believe.
Yeah, as a parent, right? I mean, you're for me, I'm protective, just somewhat of my kids, and you talk about a tough time. I do worry about what our children are going to sort of see from this. They need to know that their parents are weathering this storm. But there's a there's a scary time in the future for
They're you know what? They're resilient. They'll figure it out.
yeah,
I'm feeling really optimistic about it. But my
yeah,
philosophy on parenting is treat it like a garden. You know what I mean? Like, water it, tend it, but don't. Other than that, you don't force something to grow. You know what I mean? It's like
sure,
it's gonna take the
yeah.
path it's gonna take.
Can't go harvest it every couple hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think any parent can relate to the fact that change for kids is a scary thing, right? If they're stuck on a schedule where they're trying to do virtual classroom, and it's we're blessed in some ways that maybe we have access to technology to get kids moving through this thing ahead. But personally, my youngest son Nolan, he graduates this year as a senior, and his senior year just disappeared, right? So the opportunity to graduate with his classmates and walk the stage and get his diploma and go to
Yeah.
prom and all those things are gone. And
Yeah.
I feel for him. And
Yeah.
it's unprecedented, right? Nobody else has gone through this before either. And so, if I think I saw that there was a student that pitched having a nationwide commencement speech for hope from a very phenomenal speaker, previous presidential figure. And I think having that opportunity for hope for kids is great, man, because they need to see some kind of future that doesn't look futile and rife with pandemic, So I hope it happens. But that gets a little heavy, and I didn't want to get heavy with you because for friends of mine out there that should know, Jason's got his hands in so many pies. He's a mover. He's a shaker. You work in so many different areas, Jace. And every time I come away with a couple of hours of time with you, we get together for coffee. It seems like twice a year. We might get twice a year. And every time I walk out of that, I feel charged. Not because the extrovert gets to charge from extra time with somebody else, but you fascinated me. You got energy driven in the right way. You focus on the positive stuff. You don't let the negative stuff kind of get to your business decisions or your persona, which is awesome. And I think there's got to be some of that came from this business principle that you have. And so I wanted to know where the poker principles came from. Was it something happened in Austin? Is it something as a child you grew up with this? But tell people about how you came up with this program, because I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, so what Kevy's referring to is that I at one point when I was doing more business consulting, I developed a framework for a management course or using poker principles. And I'm not, I'm sure it's been done, but there wasn't anything that I felt was substantive at the time. But anyway, the idea was just born out of what, had ended up happening. Just the way that timing worked out is when I had left my last company, when I was doing consulting, when I had a lot of time on my hands, it happened to be at the time when the poker craze was. And so I sort of just dove into the game and, just got every book I could get and logged hours and hours. And I started spreadsheets tracking wins and losses. And so eventually I came to realize that, poker, when it comes right down to it, it's really just a game of making decisions.
Right.
I mean, that's really it. And I think that was the greatest parallel for life. And so I started looking at, well, where are the parallels? And so, one of the big ones, which is why I don't tend to get hung up even when things are completely shitty, is just because the number one thing about poker is that you measure your success on a continuum. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, yeah, maybe there's like one sitting where you might lose money or one hand where you might lose money, but if you can't look at it as a long-term proposition, you really shouldn't even be playing in the game in the first place, right? Because poker is part skill and part luck. I would argue that it's much. I mean, I think it's, lots been made of it. Poker is it is a game of skill. I think that people who know anything about it know that that's the case, but with a luck element. And life's the same way. Case in point, right? If we were to look at like what's happening right now as a poker hand, I would look at it from my own perspective like this. Here I am, right? I had 4 cards, right, out of 5 coming, and at that point in the game, I was in a really strong position. Doing great. I loved my hand. I made a strong bet. And then Lady Luck just came down. The river came and changed the scenario completely. Right? And all of a sudden, like what was almost a surefire win for the hand is now a complete loss. Now, you don't get the benefit of knowing what that 5th card is, right? So knowing what I know now, would I have made any decisions differently? No. In fact, I would make the exact same decision 10 times, because you know what? 99 times out of 100, it's not going to get screwed by a pandemic. Yeah. That's just one principle. So I think that, a lot of the time, I think that we tend, as humans, it's very easy to look at like what has happened up to this point and factor that into the decision going forward. But the reality is, when you're making a decision, and again, poker, like life, is a game of decisions. All you can do is make a decision right now with the information you have right now. And what you did before, other than giving you information to learn from, to apply to the future, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what investment I've made. Doesn't matter how much money I put in. I mean, whether I was right or wrong or whatever. Right. And so there's a certain amount of sort of zen, and just, I think once you accept that, if you make good decisions, you're going to win over time, win the game, or whatever your goal is. I don't like winning and losing, because I don't like looking at life like winning and losing. That's where the metaphor breaks down for me, or the analogy. But I'll get back to that. I don't like the win, but I think that the principles of decision making still apply. So I choose to look at like a continuum. If you're a concert promoter, any concert promoter who's been doing this any length of time will tell you, you better have a really fucking short memory. Yeah. Because sometimes you have a great show that doesn't do well, and for reasons that, in my business, I might have a killer show, and then all of a sudden, the real Bon Jovi's playing the same night my December tribute's playing, right? Well, does that mean that I shouldn't have got that date on the calendar when I did, because it was available for, you know what I mean? Like, no, it was the right decision. I'm going to keep booking that show. Absolutely. But I can't help it. Yeah. So I'm not going to sweat. I'm not going to go, I shouldn't have done the show. He's like, well, no, I should have done it. It just didn't work out. In that scenario, let me ask you. So do you then measure your expectations differently, right? So yeah, you don't beat yourself up about having done it, but then do you just say, all right, I've got to just reshift my perspective on what I expected from that show? That's a good question. Again, I don't generally feel burdened by expectations, certainly not my own. So it's hard for me to think in those terms. I don't, I basically just, I look at the success or failure of a show basically like, I look at it in more like esoteric criteria. Like the numbers are important, but it's actually not one of the first things I look at. What I'm concerned about is, were the fans happy? Was the venue happy? Was the band happy? If those 3 things happen, there's a pretty good chance I made money on the show. I guess so. That's how I do it. So I go back and look, and I'll say, hey, I might have a show that, only sold half the venue. I've literally had shows that sold half the venue that had sold out the year before. Yeah. In the same time of year, right? So the same lineup. And so that can be inexplicable. So that's why you don't like second guess the decisions. You're like, no, it was a solid bill. It just didn't work this date. Right. Whatever. I'm going to do it again. Million different factors. Did it affect maybe your discussion with bands or venues on guarantees? Well, you look for patterns, right? I think the past is relevant when you start to find patterns, because you're analyzing the continuum, not one point. So I would say that, for example, let's say I did that same show 2 more times and it lost money, or half sold, then all of a sudden the fluke was the first one. Yeah. And then you reevaluate. So, I mean, ultimately, yes, it's a performance-based business, but I don't think it's fair necessarily to judge a particular act based on a sample size of 1. because there are too many variables that impact the outcome.
Right.
I think, for example, if you book a band, there are many cases where we've booked bands and basically everything was right except for the turnout.
Yeah.
And more often than not, clients, I'm speaking sort of in both as a talent agent, but also as a promoter, venues, or they're objective too, because most of them aren't new to this business either. You know, a good venue, like Aladdin Theater is a great example, right? They can look at a show and they're like, yeah, that didn't do very well. But when I go back to book again, they're like, yeah, let's do it again, because the history of those bands in this venue overall is really good.
Over time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't get hung up on one show hardly ever, unless it's just a complete fiasco beyond all recognition.
Sure. Yeah. No, I love that. You know, I'm blessed with the opportunity of kind of getting to look at the behind the scenes from somebody like you and other people that book tours for Flock of Seagulls and stuff that we're doing. I'm amazed by the business. I love to know what went into a show. When people come out to a show, like a big show, right? You're doing a sold out stadium show, and you look at all the things that go into that, right? It's not just a band showing up on stage and walking out there and playing. You've got so many moving parts, right? You've got the venue staff that are there doing production and security and merchandising and you know, the catering and all that kind of stuff. And then the marketing and the promotion that went into it beforehand, let alone ticket sales that are just coming in the door. And so when I think about the way the music industry has been affected from this, it's not just bands that are out there that are not getting gigs. They're not just venues that are not able to stay open, but I see it affecting everybody.
Yep.
And I'm blown away by really successful ventures that are doing really well. You know, we don't have to get into the debatable sort of background on like Live Nation right now, but we work with them quite a bit, you know, when we're out with the shows with the Flock of Seagulls. And there's a tour that we were supposed to have scheduled this summer, and a lot of people are pinging me asking, when do you think you're going to be out there? Right. Yeah. And obviously, you know, I have no answers. I don't expect the singer from my band to have any answers. I don't expect the booking agents that are promoting these shows to even have those answers. And I kind of feel like you get a pass at this point right now to just be able to let science sort of dictate what happens here for the greater safety of people, you know? But
well, not to go wax too philosophical here, but isn't like one of the greatest signs of wisdom is the ability to acknowledge what you don't know?
Yeah.
I think that, you know, if there was sort of one sort of, you know, introspective thing about all this is that, I mean, on the one hand, you have to have an opinion because that's human. You know, we form judgments, we have opinion. On the other hand, you know, I do think it's important to say, okay, you know, if I don't know, I should, you know, do the next best thing, which is to try to figure out who knows the best. That's my next thing, you know.
Right.
I think it's really easy to have, you know, you got to be careful with logic and science, because if you don't understand the science, then your logic is going to break down really fast.
Sure.
So
if you're professing to be the expert, right? It's nice to be able to put some of that weight on the people that do have those answers, that have studied, you know, their entire life, you know, which is why, you know, I think I've seen a disparity in the way people handle their response to, say, you booking shows, people that don't know your methods. And so it's funny to see people that get cranky because they don't get added to, say, Hairfest or added to a roster, because they're, in their eyes, you know, we went out and we got the right outfits. We practiced our, you know, music in the garage. And so we have our stuff together.
Yeah, we did all the things we said we should do.
Right. Yeah. Without having really the idea of it be, you know, of saying the only way for this to be financially viable for anybody is to make sure that you get people out to come see this new, you know, craft that you've, you know, put forth. And so I think a lot of that comes from time and wisdom. A lot of it's just ignorance, you know, and so there's education that has to happen for people. If bands are out there wanting to get gigs, and, you know, you and I could start a whole different chapter on, you know, like mistakes that bands make, right? And why they don't get booked. And we're not going to go there now, because I've made half of those things myself. And,
you know, I will tell you too, like one of the things, I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize this, but like, I mean, as a side thread, you know, one of the things of the sort of the quarantine times here that's been joyous for me is getting to feel some camaraderie, amongst the drummer community at large. And I have some of that
Yeah.
anyway, but I, for me, like that's the one sort of like bittersweet thing about becoming, more successful on the business side is that I don't have nearly as much of an identity as a musician. And what makes it complicated is that, I mean, I still see myself as a peer to other musicians, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's hard maybe for that to sometimes be reciprocal because of the role I play in terms of being a gatekeeper for gigs or whatever. And so it's a little bit frustrating because I always feel like there's a little bit of damned if you do and damned if you don't. And also like, I mean, imagine, well, you can imagine. I mean, you sure have been, even with me, you've probably been. I mean, you and I are buddies,
Yeah.
and there have been situations where I didn't book your band. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like it's just awkward for me. And again, I'm not. It's not a woe is me thing. I chose to do everything I'm doing, but it is one of the trickier dynamics. That's why I try to give people more objective, sort of feedback.
Yeah.
What's happening. I try to, but again, like poker, a band can make all the right decisions and still not win every hand.
You bet.
You got to keep playing.
That's relationship as a whole, right? I mean, poker is about a relationship that you have with the other guys at the table, right? And the hand that you have in bands. In the case that you just mentioned, people that are in the local circle know that you and I are buddies, right? And so, if say there was an opportunity like that where you book a show, festival, or anything like that, where you didn't have my band associated.
Hey Kevin, what the fuck? Why didn't he put our band on the bill?
Yeah, and like I get a myriad of things like, what's wrong with this? Like, can you talk to him? Or and I can honestly say that everything that you do is based primarily on a business decision. From what I've seen, you don't base decisions on emotional sort of reaction, and there have been.
I try not to.
Right. Okay.
I try.
And that attempt is really solid because you see a lot of people in the industry, right, that base a lot of their business decisions on emotion, right? And I'm guilty of it too, and it's something.
I think that emotion should be the tiebreaker for logic. So, and I think that again, going back to the poker analogy, you get into a hand and you're always evaluating the math of the hand, but maybe it comes down to you and one other player at the final card. The math is a toss up, and then you're like, okay, what does your gut tell you? You know what I mean? And that's the other thing too, is that you have to accept that. God, one of my favorite sayings, and I don't know who said it or if it just popped into my head, but I'm sure somebody has said it. It's the road to success is paved with failure.
Yeah.
Like I honestly believe that the more comfortable somebody gets with just fucking up all the time, the better off you're going to be. Like I am really comfortable with messing up now. It's like my buddy.
Yeah.
If you look at I love it when people like to scream about the profitability of shows and all this. I mean, if you could see some of the clinkers I phone in, on a monthly basis,
on
a weekly basis,
yeah.
I'll look at the end of a weekend and it's like, oh, these 4 shows kicked ass and these 2, lost a little bit of money and Jesus, one wiped out the profit from everything.
Right.
It happens, you know what I mean? So it's like, you gotta go, oh, well, whatever I can learn from it and move on.
That is the thing, if you could be ultimately transparent and share all of that stuff with some of these bands, they would become a little bit, you would hope, right? Less anxiety about not getting booked on a show. And
if I had the time, actually, to be honest, I would actually, I do think that to be even handed about this, I think that the bands that I work with would be better served if I could give them more feedback than I am currently.
Sure.
To be honest, the problem is I just don't have the wherewithal to do it. I mean, that's the reality of it. I think people who kind of are, understand kind of what I do is I do try to spend a certain amount of energy on educating musicians about matters of business. Waxes and wanes about how much of that I can do. It's really hard time-wise to have one-on-one conversations just because of what it's usually like. Again, Kevin and I were joking before. This is like, man, this will probably be one of the longest conversations we've ever had.
Yeah.
And one of the few times that both of us would ever be able to do this at the same time. So it's kind of, but anyway.
Yeah, take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah.
Some of those things that you talked about, you do have a channel to be able to present some of that information you've already done through like Vortex Magazine, and you do some of these sort of short, I guess, seminars in the past. It'd be great that if you want to kind of pitch a little bit about where people can get some of these resources, because I mean, they're invaluable to me. It's to me, it's as valuable as that poker library that you have, that you stashed
Yeah.
away in your house.
I mean, I certainly don't want to give short shrift to anyone in particular, but there are two that definitely come to mind immediately, that I think are the starting points for any local musician in the Portland metro area, in terms of, both in terms of, knowledge, and in terms of just understanding what's going on, news, interesting, So one of them is Music Portland. I mean, honestly, at this point, if you're a musician and you're not a member of Music Portland,
Is it a Facebook group?
which costs nothing, by the way, then, shame on you, because really, like, if every musician, I don't think people realize this, but they're basically the ones who are advocating for all this stuff, like getting more economic benefits for musicians, things about loading zones. And musicians union also very helpful. And they're basically what they're done is they've created a trade group for local music, and so they're basically aggregating all the economic power so that we can lobby for the industry.
Oh man,
But most musicians haven't signed up, and what they don't realize is that if they would just sign up, you don't have to do anything after that.
Yeah.
All you do is you can just get information when it comes. I mean, it's amazing. If you're a musician, you want to try to figure out what's going on with all this, like getting paid and all this stuff right now.
Yeah.
Look at Music Portland. They have an email that goes out constantly. I know what's going on because I've got the Music Portland email.
You bet.
And then the other resource is Vortex Music Magazine, which I subscribe to and I recommend for $25 that people chip in, because it's a really awesome local publication, super engaged, super involved at pretty much every level of local music. Chris Young, who runs that outfit, he's a stud, great journalist, just a great pocket for all this stuff. So it would be, having a local music press like that is really important. I would encourage everybody to go you'll get a printed copy.
Yeah.
I think once a quarter, and it's really good. And they have a lot of educational events and stuff. But right now, like, they're in all the Vortex and Music Portland are basically hand in hand in communications with the governor's office, with the city. So they're really going to have the most current info on what's going on over here.
You mentioned here, but honestly, everything I've read in Vortex, I mean, Chris is great this way. What I've read from their publication is not specific to the Portland area. I mean, it really, you get a flood everywhere.
Yeah, because he gives everything context.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You had some questions that when you did your Q&A the other day, you touched on the tribute scene in Portland area. Some people talked about what's the difference between the Portland music scene in tributes versus the other areas. And some people chimed in, and you agreed that the vibe, the connection the bands had. I am blessed and privileged, I guess, to get to see this all over the world, man. When we toured last July in the UK, one of the first stops we had was in Wolverhampton, UK, and actually in Glasgow, Scotland. Both of them had a tribute festival happening that week. And I looked, I'm intrigued, right? I played a couple of local tributes. I got this Shoot to Thrill AC/DC tribute locally, and Bon Jovi Steel Horse tribute. But I agree with you that the connection that we've all made as a collective unit of bands works a lot better when we work in concert with each other, right? And helping each other, being supportive, not only going out to see these shows, but helping promote is huge. You see these other places. I know that Mark Thomas is, really involved in a tribute scene in Texas primarily. He sees things different in terms of the way that bands work together. There's still a successful tribute scene, huge in LA, but it's a niche thing, right? So the tribute people go to tribute shows. They don't necessarily go to the original shows and support tribute bands. It's kind of like almost one to the other in a greater population. I don't want to label everybody that way, but the tribute thing is, I think, sort of a more representational thing of like where people are at in their mindset, right? Especially the 80s, right? These 80s bands that I'm playing in, even outside the tribute, people want the escape for a couple of hours that they can play make believe and go back to a time in their life where they don't have to think about how tough their bank account is right now, or what's going on politically or environmentally or anything else. They can just tune out for a couple of hours and pretend like they're back in high school, going to prom. And so it's that kind of like focus on especially tribute, because it really is the entertainment piece of this music. It's not just going out to see a club band and hearing the songs you like, but it's the experience, right? But it's not just local, for sure. It's everywhere. I mean, Canada, UK, Germany, I'm seeing, Australia's got a huge scene right there as well, which is fun to see. It's just that we don't get to see how the connection is between those bands. But when you talked a lot about the tribute scene in your conversation the other day, one thing I was thinking about was that people just associate you with being involved in tribute bands. It's great that you've got the Canby Country Fest going on with all original music, and I know you made efforts to do the Mogo Fest a couple of
Yeah, I
times.
did. I did two original music festivals. The runs at it. This Mogo, for lack of a better term, and the first year I did it for 2 years. The last one was in 2017, and that one had like 76 bands at 13 local venues.
Jeez.
And it was really, I mean, it was an amazing experience, and it was never anything that was obviously ever going to make money. I mean, it wasn't the goal. Like
Right.
I knew, I was just kind of hoping to break even. The first year, it was pretty ugly. Second year, I actually got pretty close to break even, which is fine. But I mean, it was interesting because it helped me form some relationships, which I still have to this day, in a lot of different segments of the community, which I otherwise, as sort of a tribute guy, wouldn't have gotten to know. Guys like Farnell Newton and
Right.
Max Smith, some of the guys who are more on the hip hop scene, who obviously I have no, other connection to see into their world. A lot of the folks in the country scene, and so that part of it's been really cool. And it's given me some insight, but it is interesting, the dynamic between original bands. I will say that original musicians are in Portland, I think, are on balance pretty good about supporting each other's shows. I think it's
Yeah.
more of an audience thing. I mean, it's a whole other topic. I mean, we can get into it, of why original music sometimes struggles, but it's almost a moot point now, I guess. But it is interesting. They're different. I,
You
I think I think some of it has to do with the age group of the tribute scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And where most of us are in our lives,
Sure.
and the fact that the music has a nostalgic element. I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah, I think so. I can see it. You uh when you thought about what you I guess when you talked about your academic function, or your academic exploits between going to PIT and then moving on to Austin and go to school down there, and really wanted to have some music be a big connection for you. Did you have a vision of sort of developing a wider expanse of music integration here back when you came back? Does that make sense? Like,
No, yeah, no, no, it was definitely not. So first of all, I'm not a goal setter. I don't stick goals. I
right.
think I don't believe in that exercise. I understand why people do it, but it doesn't work for me. I believe in setting directions.
Okay.
And then moving in that direction, because it allows you to be more flexible. If you're
Mm.
moving in a direction, then your activities are just continue to be designed to move you in that direction. But the reason I like a direction is a lot easier to change than a goal. If you change a goal, all of a sudden you like somehow failed. I didn't
Right.
meet that goal. But the direction has changed, based on the way the wind blows or other factors, or you reach obstacles, you just get around it, and maybe you get back on the same direction. I don't know. Again, just so. In the case of music, it was in the getting because my last company focused on marketing and technology.
Right.
So that's kind of the marketing side of things. And so what happened was everything that happened as a business person was either opportunistic based on what was happening, or a necessity. So I'll give you some specific examples. Starting as a musician, right?
Yep.
We needed, like I said earlier, we had to keep people in the club, so we developed the 80s night. We saw that was successful, so we decided we're just going to have the band do all 80s, and then that was successful. And then we did the 5 Journey songs with Kevin Hahn at the Thirsty Lion one night, and that was successful, so we did a whole tribute band. Then I started to, like, once I had the tribute band, I was like, well, I didn't know any promoters, so I had to I'll be the promoter. I mean, I know marketing, so I can figure this out. But
Sure.
then I got approached by Appetite for Deception. Actually, you can see behind me, it's still one of my favorite moments ever. guys from Appetite gave this to me after our first show at the Aladdin Theater. We sold it out. They were the first band that I ever worked with. And I mean, I just remember all of it. They came to me and they're like, and I love this too. I love the way they put it, because this is so Appetite. It's like, well, in general, we're actually probably a stronger band than Stone in Love, but we're, playing for 45 people at the back alley, making $75.
Right.
What's up? And I agree with every word of that, by the way. I think Stone in Love, I think we're really good. And, we're really successful for sometimes for other reasons, just because it's Journey and it's more accessible. But Appetite is superior in terms of, most of the measures of a tribute band in terms of authenticity, So I always thought they're amazing. And I actually agreed. I'm like, yeah, this makes no sense. These guys are too good. So all we did was we applied the same principles that sold out our Stone in Love show to the Appetite show. Then we sold it out. Then there was a moment. As I was standing in the room it was the Aladdin Theater again, and the second show here, this first show with Appetite, was the first show I had ever done as a promoter where I wasn't playing in the show.
Right.
For me, it was more like, I wonder what it would be like to promote a show that I wasn't playing in, where I could just focus on being the promoter. And so it was worthwhile because I learned some things. And the biggest thing I learned was this whole idea of overlapping audiences, which is probably obvious to other people, but I hadn't really considered it. So what I mean by that is I looked around at the Appetite for Deception show. It seemed like about 25% of the people who were there were at our Stone in Love show.
Yeah.
And then later that night, we were at a club, like an after party thing, and we were talking to Eli Johnson. He's like, hey, man, I want in on this. And we were talking about, saying I sound a lot like Bon Jovi, and this was the beginning of your band, Steel Horse. And then I thought about it. I'm like, wow, Bon Jovi. Like, that is literally the intersection between Guns N' Roses and Journey, right? Have you heard of Journey? More soccer mommy than Appetite. So
yeah.
And we did that show, and then we were successful together. And in that audience, again, you can see the overlap. And so it was from that point, it became a little bit more obvious what needed to happen, which was, I've always believed that bands have spent too much energy trying to get gigs when they should be spending their energy trying to get fans.
Sure.
I guarantee you, there is no band in the universe that has lots of paying fans that's struggling to get gigs.
Yep.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
There is no band, zero bands like that in the world. So
repeat that again so people can mark that down.
There are no bands with large paying fan bases that are having trouble getting gigs.
There you go.
So the whole point is, like, rather than focusing on getting gigs, your thinking should be, how are we going to get fans? Because I guarantee if you get fans, all the other stuff that you're having trouble with are a lot easier. So
you bet.
That's where you want to put your energy. Most bands, they just get on a treadmill and they play, but they don't do any audience development. And,
yeah. I can relate that, to the bands that we tour with quite a bit. Right. Some real fascinating things for me are that I'm a huge 80s fan, grew up just smitten with all these bands, not just the new wave and pop scene. I was a butt rock guy, right? So Scorpions, my all-time favorite band, and I was such a
Larry Smith, Love Drive.
Oh, man, I was such a fan, Jason. Like, my close people know, and it's an embarrassing thing that my girlfriend at the time, my ex-wife, and I went to Germany to find their hometowns. I wanted to find the Scorpions and express how much they meant to me.
Oh my God. Fanboy Kevin, I love it, man.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And not much has changed, right? I'm still that guy. But when we're out doing these shows with these bands, I really feel like the friendships that I've developed with the bands that we're touring with they're sincere. That it went from being fanboy Kevin to just really being appreciative for the music they created, but then the type of humans they are, right? So
it's like the tribute scene, except real bands.
It's exactly right, man. And sometimes it's a smattering of original members, and that's a conversation that could be had later too.
Hey, look, let me just for a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Foreigner, right?
Right.
You're the poster child for not having original man. I don't care, dude.
Doesn't matter.
Kelly Hansen is a baller.
He really is, man. Like,
that whole band is awesome. So whatever.
Yep. No, you're right. Anybody that didn't know that they went through a transition and they didn't really, think about those things, goes to see Foreigner right now. That band sounds as good as it ever has.
So I didn't even know when I went. He was a lot. I'm sure you were at the show too if you weren't out touring. That the show that they played here in Portland with Night Ranger. And
oh yeah.
Bernie, and unfortunately, the Journey singer was ill. He did a serviceable job. It wasn't his best night, but he was sick and
Yeah.
ended the tour. But anyway, I really had no expectations for Foreigner because I didn't know where they were at. I just knew from
Right.
of course, Night Ranger was amazing, and I knew
Amazing.
but dude, Foreigner might have stolen that show, man. They did steal the show. When Kelly Hansen came out and started singing,
Yeah.
it's like him and Rich Ray, these guys who can just sing up in the stratosphere all
Yeah.
night long. I just can't even imagine.
Yeah. Well, no, you just forgot to mention too that Mark Shulman was playing drums for him that night.
Oh
Who
yeah.
also, local hometown boy who just slays. And
I've seen I get you guys mixed up in a video if you wouldn't put it close.
Mark and I,
Yeah, you both
not.
you both have a really visual style. You know what I mean?
Man.
Similar bodies, habitus, and you guys both sit kind of low.
Yeah, bombastic and personality sometimes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Shulman is man, heroic to me in a bunch of different ways. And I should tell you something about this a couple of experiences I had with Mark the last few years, because he had been here, right? He was here in Portland living with Tim Ellis, and they had a band called Buster with Steve Hale. That actually they had Raya first, and I think Buster was a different evolution. But anyway, Mark Shulman went back to LA, just went after this pursuit of rock stardom, and he's got a great book out, man, where Mark has developed this. You talk about diversification. Mark has a book about his program that he wrote. He does a lot of public speaking in corporate environments. He'll go to Microsoft and other places where he talks about conquering stage fright. And not just being able to walk on stage and not being able to handle, playing in front of 50,000 people, but it's really making business decisions not based on fear. And it's a great program. The book is fantastic, and he is very humble in you talk about being okay with screwing up. Yeah, the intro of the book, without giving away the rest of it, is that he got his ass kicked, right? He went and auditioned for Bad English. And so Jonathan Cain, Neil Sean, all these guys are having him come in and take this punk kid in to audition for Bad English, this evolution of Journey, all-stars. And I think it was Jonathan Cain that threw a metronome at him and said, "Get the fuck out of here and work on the metronome." So ended up with Dean Castronovo, another phenomenal local buddy of ours. And but that was Mark's first sense of humility, and it was something that led him to a point right now where when Pink came through last year, he and I have hung on a bunch of different occasions where, he was with Cher for a while, he was with Stevie Nicks for a while, and obviously Foreigner. He's played with everybody, but when he came through with Pink, some of this I probably came from being a dad. Some of it probably came from wisdom and growing older, but I witnessed this remarkable fan interaction that he had with somebody on the street. The band was all staying at a great hotel downtown that some of the bands hang out when they come through town. And he and I met for lunch. And outside, when we got down to the street, Pink's daughter was being walked by the nanny, and we stopped to talk to them. And as we stopped, fans came over to try and mob Mark. And it wasn't just the matter of turning them, he wasn't going to turn them away and say, "Hey man, I can't do pictures or whatever." But they asked if, he had a souvenir. He carries around a tiny little 8-inch and 10-inch rack tom that he can give out in his little purse, signed to just fans on the street. He didn't have some stuff for somebody, so he took their address down and he was going to send them a pair of sticks. And I thought that attention that they gave these fans was so important that they'll never forget it, right? And for me, it was a huge, my heart swelled up, right? Because I saw that I knew how it would impact other people, and musicians sometimes fail to see how a small little interaction like that could have a big impact on somebody's well-being. But
I'm gonna there's a segue here that needs to happen. So because I know we were going to talk about this, right? And I want to go with this idea of the connection with fans.
Sure.
Because again, one of the big questions I get is about live streaming music right now as sort of a substitute for live music in the interim. And so, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge a couple things around that. One of them, because I've spoken about this in the past publicly, is that historically, in order to play a song that you didn't write, once any kind of image is tied to it, whether it's Facebook Live or even a slideshow with pictures of monkeys, you have to obtain the sync rights. And even if no money is being charged, you have to obtain the sync rights, and it is both time consuming and prohibitively expensive. And so historically, I've really discouraged doing videos for cover bands and tribute bands. However, I think given the current context, it's probably worth saying that even though I can't make that as a legal recommendation because it's illegal, I can say that this whole idea of mutually assured destruction will probably protect you for the foreseeable future.
Sure.
Which is that if anyone wanted to, first of all, if anybody wanted to enforce video sync rights right now, they're not going to go after you unless you're making money. But the thing I wanted to mention about that is that what's going to happen is that, this is my prediction, is that eventually folks are going to start figuring out how to monetize this better.
You bet.
At the same time, the original band can't make any money touring.
Right.
They're going to look at that and go, wait a minute, this guy's making money. And then all of a sudden, so here's my point. Just be prepared. If you find yourself being successful at making money for streaming other people's music, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it right now. What I'm saying is that be ready for when you are successful for someone to come and try and shut you down, because now you're actually costing them money and they can't make it some other way.
Right.
See, normally you can't make a case that a cover band on YouTube playing a cover song is damaging Flock of Seagulls.
Right.
But now Flock of Seagulls can't tour. And now 80s bands out there are all playing Flock of Seagulls tunes and charging money for little online dance parties or whatever, right? What's going to happen? So I just wanted to point that out because I don't think people are necessarily thinking it through.
Yeah.
The other thing that I don't think that necessarily people might not be considering is that just, again, having to be realistic that the number of folks who are going to be successful generating substantial, replacement income with live streaming is going to be infinitesimal. And I don't mean to be pessimistic about that. It's just a numbers game. We went from having X number of online streaming opportunities to view music till X times some exponent that I can't even wrap my head around. There's music from everywhere. And, guys like, my next door neighbor are competing with the real bands who are also doing concerts for free.
Right.
You get where I'm going with that. We don't all of a sudden have a bunch of people who are going to take their dollars they were spending at the bar and take those same dollars and put them online. And even if they did, it's as if every bar is open at one time with every band in the universe playing on the same night.
Right.
And then the other thing too is that about the fan connection is that online music, until virtual reality is like really a thing, like Ready Player One kind of technology, it's never going to replace live music as a thing, because the fan interaction, not only with the band but with each other, cannot be replicated.
Right.
Energy cannot be replicated with current technology today, and no time in the next 100 years are we going to be there. So for anybody worried about live music ultimately changing in some new world order, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's not going to happen. Eventually, we're going to get this under control, and people are going to be playing concerts again.
I do like that. I'm not pessimistic that there won't be an opportunity for live music to happen and for us to engage with the live fan base. I know you're a sports fan, or at least a basketball fan. So I know, they talk about having live sports happen right now where they could have the venues with no fans in the audience. And to me, that seems ridiculous and crazy.
Well, except that it is, what's interesting about that is I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, let's look at the NBA, the only game I actually like.
Right.
Actually, I take that back. It's the only one I really follow. I like other games. But anyway,
Sure.
Is that what you might see is a change in the approach. It reminds me of, like, let's say, for example, that you were shooting a promo video, but you didn't have an audience.
Right.
So what you're doing is you're getting a lot of tight shots, cool angles, fast cuts. It may be that the product that they put out in professional sports operates the same way, which is all of a sudden, instead of having 10 cameras, they have 100 cameras.
Sure.
It becomes some, I don't know. I'm just saying that there may be, there will be some capable outcomes out of this. You know what I mean? Sure. Like maybe someone will start up a podcast, for example,
right.
talking to musicians and music folks around the country that, with where people like to tune in and have great conversations. So, that kind of thing might come about.
Crazy. Yeah. The sports thing is a little bit different in that I've, from a monetization point, they talk about, I know NFL saying that 85% of the revenue all comes from TV broadcast. And they've got, marketing and merchandising dollars that happen without needing to have 100,000 fans in a stadium. But college sports, I've seen that college NFL or college football, college basketball right now is off the table because fan integration is so strong and so important that there's no point in even putting that together. So I would imagine that small venues, if they can withstand the pandemic sort of crush, hopefully can get back and integrate live music.
Yeah, I mean, I will just tell you straight up that the only way that small and mid-sized live music venues are going to survive this is with government assistance. It will not happen any other way.
Right.
So I'll tell you what, man, when you see, like, I something I almost never do. I got it from the Aladdin Theater. It came to me and it said, "Hey, could you take the time to write these 3 people and make these points?" And it's like, I did it.
Good for you.
Because the live music venues, they, from the even down at the 100-person size, little 75 cap venues, like, it's great that it's great that alcohol sales are happening.
Right.
But that's not helping people who are strictly on, live music revenue. And
Right.
So anyway, the bottom line is because they have rent to pay,
Yeah.
and they, we're talking about a situation where it might actually be 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever. Most music venues don't have savings.
Right. Yeah.
They're already struggling. So I'll just tell you that if we don't collectively support the movement, you're going to see a lot more of it because there's a relatively new coalition that is starting to sort of get more visibility. I'll try to post about it later.
Yeah, please do.
You can share it. But there is a coalition of small independent music venues. I know that True West and the Knitting Factory Entertainment, Monkey, a lot of these entities, that both promoter owner entities are active in promoting this, and so I think it's really important.
Good. You hope that happens at a national level, right? That these coalitions can come together and sort of get federal.
Yeah, I mean, at some level, that's what they're doing. The coalition is a national level.
Yeah,
it's all over. So I think it's like 500 venues. It is nationwide. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. It, like, even outside the nation, I saw that people that have chimed in on the Facebook watch, we've got quite a few friends over in Australia that jumped on there, and some friends in Germany, looks like some in the UK, and musicians in those areas are dealing with the same thing we're all dealing with, right? So I spoke to a business owner this morning, a friend of mine, my wonderful German hair stylist, Claudia, and she said that the government assistance that they're getting for small business is exponentially more involved than what they've been, here in the States. And without getting political, it's nice to see that some areas are being taken care of well. She said she feels ashamed that she's getting that kind of assistance in their area where.
Well, I guess, the only perspective obviously I can speak from is my own. And, I know we won't go too deep into this, but I will say that I own 3 businesses, right?
Yeah.
And I will tell you that, I don't believe that whatever our federal and state governments are doing is good enough, and in fact, it's not even close.
Right.
So if there's any sort of narrative around them doing a good job handling it from a small business perspective, I can't speak for every small business. I can tell you that I have 3 businesses, and it is no fucking help right now.
Yeah. Right.
So it probably will be once things sort of get smoothed out and delayed. Again, I'm not like a big or a small government advocate.
Right.
I'm kind of okay with either. When it comes to politics, my only ask, it's never ideological. All I care about is I want people in positions of political power to be ethical and competent.
Doesn't that seem like it shouldn't be too much of an ask?
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, the rest of it, I actually don't give a shit about.
Right. Yeah.
You want to live in a socialist country? If they can do it, well, fine.
Right.
If they would meet those 2 criteria, ethical, competent, right?
Right.
Or if we want to live in the opposite, something where there's really fine. If they're good at it, both can work.
Right.
So much made of this fucking ideology stuff, and it's like so much bullshit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's so fucking stupid. is that this, you know, if you really think about it,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't come down to that. It comes down to, you know, people making smart decisions. Back to the
Right.
poker. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
my 2 cents. Is that, hey, I'm, you know, hopefully this doesn't last, but to date, as a small business, I do not feel properly supported by the federal or state governments. That's what
Right.
I'm.
That it's something I asked on Facebook a couple of weeks ago when the Paycheck Protection Program came out to help small businesses. When they started accepting applications on April 3rd in order to sustain some small business with a stipend. Not only was I not funded, when they ran out of money, that wasn't what I was asking about. What I asked people to do is chime in if you're a small business owner, write to me personally. Just let me know if you'd been successful, because what I kept seeing from my circle of small business owners, which vast majority of my friends and network are all small business owners, whether they're self-employed or they've got contractors that are working with them. I'd only seen one in town that were friends and clients of mine that were funded. But then when I opened that question up,
I will say, just again, because I like to be even-handed about this stuff, is
yeah,
that just this week alone, I probably am aware of, in conversation or, you know, through email, of a good 10 small businesses that got $10,000 deposits from EIDL. So
yeah, yep,
it
it's
had, and
it
and
evolved.
but for every one of those, there are probably, you know, 100 stories of I couldn't even get through. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
just to balance it out.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'm not actually not saying it one sided or another. When I got a lot of feedback, I was surprised because I did see a lot of businesses that then had been funded.
Yeah,
It was just because I widened the question, right? I didn't make anything political or pointed. I
yeah,
wasn't saying woe is me. And I was glad to see that it wasn't just franchisees of a McDonald's that had employees that was getting the funding, but it
right.
was also everything from athletic clubs to, mechanics shops to little law offices and everything in between.
I have
And
no
so
doubt
I
that
did see.
I have no doubt that companies who shouldn't have gotten funds did, but I do think that the reporting on it is also misleading. Like, for example, when someone says, "Look at these publicly traded companies," I'm like, well, just because it's publicly traded doesn't mean anything. There are
Right.
tiny companies that are publicly traded. So
Right.
if we're gonna get outraged, that's fine, but at least get outraged about the right shit. Sorry,
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's the viral rant from the comedian in New York that
is
was
that Vic?
Vic.
That's
Yep.
awesome, man. That
It's
guy's
it,
so funny, but he's
it
right. He's right
he
about.
is. Yep, he absolutely is, man. And the things he got outraged about are exactly what people should be frustrated with right now in the US. But um, you got to be able to laugh about it a little bit. Otherwise, it's just frustrating and out of our hands. And, so much is out of our hands, right? So you've got to let some of that stress go because it's stuff that you got to let, you move on. But um, I'm feeling like going down this path is a little bit, it gets heated for me. My anxiety level rises a little bit when I think about my small business owner friends. I saw Joff Metz pop into the thread here a second ago. And Joff is,
Five-star guitars. Woo!
man, 5-star guitars. Absolutely, man. This guy has really sort of revolutionized the way that a music shop can be in modern day time again, right? Like,
That guy, I will tell you what, my Joff story. Well, I have lots of Joff stories, but the one of my favorite five-star guitar. This is a plug because basically, you know, I'm a guy who kind of started out on acoustic guitar, and you know, I'm a borderline electric guitar player. You know, I'm competent, but you know, not that good at it. You know, but I really in Radical Revolution, I use an acoustic for a lot of songs for my clean sound, just to get kind of thing. Anyway, long story short, I really needed a low profile guitar and one that looked more like an electric and didn't like, you know, it didn't look like Dave Matthews up there, you know, because he looks silly fronting a dance band with an acoustic guitar unless it's Dave Matthews kind of
yeah,
stuff, you know, some
right,
stuff, you know, like a guy like Brian O'Dell, he can get away with it because his music fits, but like for what we were doing, wasn't going to work for Whitney Houston.
sure.
So anyway, he hooked me up with a Taylor T5Z. So I'm just gonna say, like, it took it got rid of all my back problems playing the guitar up there with it. It sounds awesome. It's versatile. It's lightweight. So I will tell you that as a guitar player, I bought several there. Yeah, man,
And,
they're great. They're
they
great.
are for all sorts of reasons, right? They figured out a way to do online sales in a way that they had to compete with the big chain stores, and they're so involved in the community.
Yeah, they all play. I mean, that's great. I love Josh. Yeah, he's the best.
He is. I'm feeling like one of the things that you touched on a little bit, Chase, is just seeing that there are some benefits to this right now. One of the things that I wanted to just leave the conversation with was just give me one thing that you felt like maybe took for granted for that has changed right now with this time, this quarantine time, where you've had time to think, time to expand beyond expanding your culinary skills. What's a takeaway that you can take from this that you really feel like your life needed and has changed?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really easy question for me. So I have been bemoaning, as my friends will tell you, for quite a few years now about how, you know, because of what's transpired and evolved on the business front, that I really, I kind of really over the years have lost touch with the whole reason why I got involved in all this stuff in the first place, which is because I really like to play these instruments and play with other musicians and all that stuff. So my identity is I've been having so much fun. Joe Mangus the other day, it's like, dude, you gotta just put up a Rush tune. It doesn't have to be perfect, and like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's a great idea. I want to get. So it's really been fun. Like musicians that I don't normally get to hang out with, or other drummers and stuff are getting involved. And so I mean, all that, like, just getting to be like a musician again. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. And when everything starts back up again, I'm like, there's really one thing that has to change. I need to have this woodshedding time and time to just interact with other musicians at a social level around music. Like I mean, I do get social interactions, but usually, I mean, you and I get together, we talk about everything, but a lot of the time my conversations are still like people asking me questions about music, which is fine. Again, I'm a talker. I will talk, and I love to answer questions to the best of my ability. But sometimes it's just fun to bust people's chops, or
Yeah.
see your friend, see somebody put up a really cool cover of a Peter Gabriel song, or whatever,
Right.
that kind of stuff's fun. Or talk about what kind of stick someone's. Hey, I'm a Vader guy.
Absolutely.
I'm a Vader guy.
Good word, buddy.
Forever.
Yeah.
PITs, yeah, since 1990 something. Joe Porcaro walked in there. He's like, dude, you should see these.
Wow.
You turned me on to him.
Joe Joe
Jeff, yeah, yeah,
Joe Picaro turned you on to Vader Sticks.
yep.
Love it.
Yep.
Man, in a perfect world, I know you said you're not a goal setter, but who would you love to work with at an international level if you could?
Um, I mean, in reality, there really isn't anybody that I've like. I don't, because I wouldn't even know what capacity. Like as a musician, maybe, or
Either way, yeah. I mean, if you because I know driving business with music is important to you, but your passion is playing drums. I know you, man. I see you, and so yeah, what's your dream gig? If you could play with
well,
somebody
I
alive or
think
dead?
my dream gig. I mean, right now the Red Light Romeos is pretty close to it. My
Yeah,
dream gig is playing drums in a band where I'm not also singing.
sure.
I've never had a gig as a band where, and I'm playing, like Journey. I love playing Journey on drums. It's awesome, man. The parts
Yeah,
are cool. Steve Smith is incredible. The Dunbar parts, and I love it all, right? But I'm also one of the four singers in the band, so uh, you know, um, I'm having to like sing over these fills and shit, and so it's like it does like take some of the sort of the spontaneity and all that out of doing it. And so on the one hand, being a singer drummer is always recommended because it's great for getting gigs. Kenny
yeah.
Davis, wherever you are, buddy, I'm
He's
looking
here.
for you, singing drummer, right? But it really, I mean, in all seriousness, it is nice to, and I guess maybe aside from that would be to play in a band that had no commercial considerations. So just like a band where you could jam and maybe go out, maybe get to play some of the odd metered stuff that I was trained to do. And but I don't, in general, I don't have those kind of lists, man. If I want something, I do it.
Yeah,
I find a way to do it. And I don't have I know it's probably going to sound a little weird, but I don't have particularly lofty goals. Like I said, I don't really set goals. As long as I'm happy with the direction I'm going in,
yeah.
that's enough. If I
That's
don't like the
great.
direction, then I have to make a change. But where I'm at right now, even with wanting to put more music into my time during the day, it's not like really a new direction, right?
Right.
It's really just getting it, reallocating my time a little bit. Is all.
That's fulfillment, man. That's good. Knowing that you don't have that chasm of what you're longing for. It's great.
Well, I like to keep. The other thing too is I don't have any material, needs. You know, we my the newest car we own is from 2007.
Yeah.
Our place is pretty nice, but we remodeled it since 2002. So just a little bit every, what I mean, that kind of thing. Like we don't,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't. We're low maintenance, in terms of
Yeah.
that. I value experiences over things for sure.
Amen. Amen.
My clothes all suck. I mean, I'm really lucky that people give me band T-shirts.
Right.
That's literally like yeah, a good 75% of my shirts are either from bands or my festivals.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think we're in the same boat.
Yeah,
We should do a shirt trade, you and I. Except I'm a lot bigger than you, so like
yeah. Well, I'm quite small. That's probably part of that.
well, if I tried to squeeze into one of your shirts, I'd be in trouble. But I'll hang them on my walls. But I man, this time is really valuable to me. I mean, to have time to hang with you.
I love it, man. I got no agenda, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm like, wow, is this? I wasn't kidding the other night when I posted a picture about the dude.
The hairdo.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm surprised actually how easy it's been to go from being like turbo, like go, just productivity, go achieve, to like, yeah, fuck it. I'll get back on the horse when the time comes, but I can't move the immovable object, so I'm just not going to try it. I'm not going to lose sleep. I'm not going to let the bad part of the situation ruin the good part.
Absolutely. Good. Well, if the good part can include adding more purple to your hair, then there's nothing wrong with
I was actually kidding about that. You won't. There's no way I'm dyeing my hair. Are you kidding me? Lorenzo de Vargas called me the king of the nerds. Like that's sort of the role I feel in society. Which is that my ultimate goal, if it is the best I can hope for, is to be so uncool that I can complete the circle of cool.
That's right.
It's sort of like liberal and conservative. If you go far enough around, you kind of get back where you started. It's like I call it the circle of cool. I've never tried to. Being cool is impossible for me. It's not my DNA. So I just have to get far enough around the uncool circle, close to the cool circle. That's always where I'm. That's the direction I'm trying to get to.
That's your trajectory. You're gonna aim for this.
As uncool as I can be to try to get back to cool.
Yeah. God, that's a beautiful way to end this conversation, man. Yeah, like I just want you to know, man. I appreciate sharing our conversation with people.
Anytime, man. Well, I'll look forward to getting together you and everybody else out there when we finally can, man. I'll tell you what. Amen. However long it's going to be some magical times when we can all get together again.
I think so. You willing to give me a hug?
Oh yeah, big and sweaty. Right after you get off stage.
Yeah, yeah. I as much as I used to laugh about our bandmate partner that was a germaphobe, I realized he had something. There's some wisdom behind that hesitation. So
I was thinking about this, but I know you're trying to get off here, but I was actually thinking about this. So my friend Davin, right, who plays in my bands, he is I would say he's eccentric, but he's the second smartest person I know. And I was thinking about someday writing a book about everything I've learned from that guy.
You bet.
I've never seen somebody so right about so many things and have so many people not understand it.
Yeah.
I can tell you something, dude. Disagree with that guy at your own peril, because I guarantee you he's right about as much as anybody.
Yeah.
That's just the way. And I know this because a lot of my great business ideas, to be honest, come from him.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. Props to Davin, man. Yeah. You were ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, all right, brother. Well,
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's fun to share with you. I'm proud.
Say hi to the rest of the family. I'll see you online sooner than later.
Please do the same, my friend.
See you later. Take care, guys.
All right. Take care.